through this 2 days, and then we'll be breaking into a workshop session where you can really get stuck into community issues. I'm not going to do any more other than just refer back to Angela. Angela is part of Beyond Green, company we've commissioned to help us run this event for us. Over to Angela, and we'll probably wrap up. I'll probably come back to wrap up.
School, youth club and activities that might use the Heathland, not just for the village itself, but also the jobs that can potentially create, very good jobs. How to avoid monotony and repetition, which I guess is an issue that many people have brought up, in particular in relation to the nature of Dettingham Park, and that's an interesting point. The need for enclosure as well as open space. I mean, this whole question of how you create private, semi-private, and indeed public spaces that are enclosed and not just open. It's obviously a critical design issue. Need for a proper transport strategy. Fair enough, absolutely. Quite a comprehensive point about what will happen in terms of the process, whereby, you know, whatever the SPD says in terms of housing numbers and type, etc., can it be appealed, and will it end up being overruled by the Secretary of State, in particular if the MOD feels that more money can be made from more houses? We can't answer that, but clearly there's a precedent been cited in relation to the expansion of Farnborough airfield, etc., which clearly rings. Is it really rural? That's a sort of question posed. How can it be rural given what's really around? And this issue of relationship between having a centre with lots of activities concentrated in it and focal points elsewhere. So, you know, do we need additional sort of nodes of activity that aren't just housing, as well as a major centre? I think those are the key points. Some good ones. There's some new ones.
The vision, which is about sustainable connections facilitated and promoted by the village. And what we were saying last night is that we recognise that car-based transport will play a significant role in transport movements. But the intention is to develop car-free linkages and corridors to surrounding areas and facilities in order to promote non-car movement. So cycling, footpaths, so things that really help people not use the car and move around by foot and by bike. And encourage the development of an improved and economically sustainable bus.
Listening into the workshop group, I thought you had a very lively and very constructive discussion, and you certainly identified, I think, a lot of the key policy choices that we have to grapple with in thinking about the future of Deep Cut. We'll just say that the discussion you had in the workshop group this morning reflects the sorts of discussions that we as officers have at Surrey Heath and we have with our councillors. You've identified all the same sort of policy choices and probably a few more. And the key point about this process of community engagement is we're on that sort of journey as we go through this process. The sort of policy choices and issues that you've identified this morning, we will be trying to pick up and reflect in the supplementary planning document that we're producing later in the year, which will then be subject to further consultation. So we'll want to try and capture those policy choices that possibly be expressed in form of options. So again, it's just part of that evolution and development of thoughts about how the future of Deep Cut should turn out.
The people who've just heard that for the first time, have any comments on it about, does it make sense as a vision? Is there anything missing from it? Does it cover what you'd expect it to cover? Are there parts about it you like that make sense? Are there parts about it that you think are complete rubbish? Or does it ring true, or is it scary? So I'll stop talking and see if there's anyone who's got any response. There's no detailed design yet about where anything will be, but if you look at where the sort of available land would be for development, the sort of south and east of the main road is the sort of big chunk where the barracks are at the moment. So that might make sense as a potential sort of centre or focal. We really needed to recognise that car-based transport is going to, play a significant role in the area, but that actually what we needed to do was to look at car-free linkages and corridors to surrounding urban areas and other facilities that help promote non-car-based transport. So that was one of the suggested solutions. And also that there needed to be an improved and economically sustainable bus link. Is using the canal. How can we use the canal, upgrade it, so it is a recreational resource, but that it can also be used as a walking and cycling link to other towns. But overall it felt that there should not be any development here unless the transport issues were resolved. That's the strongest message we've had with everyone we've been speaking to. It was felt that even now, without any new development, the existing transport issues with the road network in terms of congestion, in terms of safety, especially at peak rush hour times. You know, it's already busy going up Deepcut Bridge Road and further up. And that, you know, any new development would only make that worse, and that's not what people want, clearly. Also, there was lots of feedback about poor public transport. In fact, in terms of there not being enough frequency, it's not going to the right place, removing school bus services, you know, all these things are causing problems, which means more people are jumping in their cars, and the road transport links all get worse and more busy. So the feedback we had was that there's a real need for a sort of strategic area-wide transport. What came out very strongly was that Dettingham Park, when it was developed, the developers there agreed to things called Section 106 commitments, which is their commitments to be allowed to do the development. They have to provide money or make other changes in the local area. And some of the things they agreed to do about widening footpaths, putting in cycle paths that haven't happened quickly or haven't happened at all in some places. So, you know, there was real feedback that if there's going to be even more development, you can't just, you know, you have to, if these things are put in place, they need to be stuck to and they need to be delivered, which it hasn't happened here. Solutions and looking at it from lots of angles is what's required. So the sort of things that were suggested was that the MOD should look at releasing other land in addition to the Princess Royal Barracks to be built. So we've got this one north-south road. Can we look at other routes across the training areas, across the Heathland, or in different directions that would help alleviate that? And very specifically to your point, it was suggested that Brunswick Road that runs across the bottom of Deepcut through the PRB and then out onto Pirbright, could that be reopened? Could the MOD release more of that land through to Pirbright to give an additional route out of Deepcut and, you know, into some of the other stations to Pirbright so you can get to Brookwood and others. The feedback on the canal is that it's very much seen as a leisure resource. You know, there's only a small number of people that would be interested in using it as a sort of commuter network for cycling and walking, and it's much more, you know, everyone's interested in having it reopened and improved, but it's very much about it being used as a leisure activity rather than commuting. They talked about the Heathland setting and how you know, if you're going to intimately link it to the Heathland and characterise it by the Heathland, then what do you need to do that? Is it about the views? Is it about how you interface with it at the edges? How do you bring the Heathland in to make sure we create a sort of diverse mixture of open space that threads through the village and incorporates lots of different types of public and private open space? 81% of people who responded wanted a village green as a focal point for a new, different types of focal point, but village green was the one that came out the strongest as being something that was, you know, really keen to be included in a redeveloped Deepcut. And we've looked at sort of other examples of village greens from local villages, you know, with different things, with ponds, with football pitches, with cricket pitches, with churches, schools, all sorts of things, and just talking about, you know, what is a village green? What does it mean to people? How big is it? Does it sit on the edge of the village? Is it right in the middle? Is it the focal point? You know, what facilities does it need?
Part was used as a good example in that there may have been ideas initially that it could be villagey, but that's not really the overriding character of it at the moment. So I think that the way to summarise it was a balance, in a sense, the right amount of housing to sustain better facilities that both serve new residents but also residents of existing parts of the area, Dettingham, the military housing and the main, what we're referring to as Old Deepcut, I suppose. And second, the integration and connection of existing with new is absolutely paramount. Now, that's both at a strategic level, so making sure that new facilities are located in a way that makes them accessible to people in existing areas, but also at the very local level, so where you have where you have fences or barriers or dead ends that block connection, can they be amended and engineered to make the whole place connect better?